So hopefully we're all settling deeper into the retreat mode, deeper into practice. Indeed, depending on from where or what we've come from, it can be a bit of a transition, a bit of a shift from a more daily life routine, somewhat dispersed values and priorities, to drop right in to a retreat like this and to really be focusing in on what we're paying attention to, what we're bringing to the forefront in our heart and mind, and really giving our value and priority to. So that can be a bit of a shift, although we do have already pretty solid practice, and the Dharma and the Dharma practice or meditation or spirituality has become more of a priority in our life, and we recognize the value and the virtue of it, then this could be quite a smooth shift, even an indulgence. Sometimes people, an indulgence, yes, an indulgence. Sometimes people ask us monastics, oh, those who they are renouncers or renouncing, or especially in this more austere tradition where you appear to, forfeit or forego many of the comforts and conveniences or pleasures or ways to manipulate and control circumstances that we have the actual good fortune to in a lay life situation where we're not oppressed and we are more free like that. But for me, did not feel that way. It felt very much like my priorities and values had already shifted to the way of Dharma and Dharma practice and meditation, and I had that sense of spiritual urgency and priority arise to really want to donate. Yes, a dana donation of my life, devote my life to Dharma practice, deepening meditation, and as it were, have the rest of life be a retreat, although albeit a fully engaged one. So yeah, the simplicity and the indulgence of this form. And so for some of us, that's how sort of effortless and coming home it might feel, this shift into retreat mode. But depending upon the contrast with our Thursday and our Friday, or whatever we've been up to in our life. Some of us have mentioned we're going through lots of changes in our life, and that could be one of the motivations, one of the inspirations for us to come to do a retreat. Back when I first was going through the accelerated spiritual discovery and inspiration phase, and really interested and curious about everything, Native American spirituality was one major inspiration during that phase. And so we would do vision quests. We would go on a vision quest, go out into nature, and already having quite a profound love of nature. And in Northern California, it's hard not to. But going out for a vision quest to really seek, spiritual insight, spiritual clarity, like that. And so for many of us, a retreat can be an opportunity for that. Or every time we go to sit at home, it's an opportunity for a vision quest to sort of open up our inner eyes and ears to what we feel in our heart, and what we are inspired by in our mind, like that. So there's so much dynamism that could be, or perhaps is always happening in our life. We're much more subdued, and some of us who are naturally quite pacified and mellow and have that as a characteristic are actually very dynamic and energetic and adventurous, for those with that. So a lot of this this practice does have to do with us sort of discovering what works for us, what we feel inspired by, of course, just what we have the karmic connection with. Sometimes it just seems that life will keep directing us in a particular spiritual direction. And that just seems to be where our sort of karmic connection is at the time. And so, or something keeps coming up in our heart. Maybe this is not right for me. We might be in a spiritual community even, and just something will keep telling us inside, this isn't really right for me. If we can't put our finger on it, it's not just the view or the style of practice or technique or how they hold communal living or what precepts they're keeping. We're not quite sure. So those might be good inner indications for us to, again, keep our eyes and ears, heart and mind open to find a spirituality, a spiritual practice, a spiritual community that we really feel connected with. For those of us that actually do feel they discover, their spiritual karmic connection like that, it can be just absolutely wonderfully simplifying. And all the little things we used to have hesitation and doubt about just seem to subside. And we feel, aha, I found it. This is my calling for now, anyway. But that can just feel wonderful. So it's kind of a both end. Sometimes we, get this, and it can be depends on how we hear it. But, when the student is ready, the teacher appears, kind of a thing. So it is a kind of a both end that we are focusing on clarifying our spiritual inspiration, keeping our eyes and ears open, and finding, kind of a practice that we connect with there. So, like say in my case, when I came across the teachings, cosmology came up last night, and we're going to divert that question to the end. But so those are things, although I was interested in science and cosmology, as far as, spiritual inspiration was concerned, as soon as I heard these teachings, and actually, credit due, it was Ram Dass and the book Be Here Now, which I, just found at a garage sale Saturday, biking by. What's this? Oh, it's Be Here Now. And that was a karmic collision for me. Just the teachings in there, they're not dogmatic. They're not like, narrow, only sectarian like that. They're just very, very open-minded, open-hearted. And the timing was right for me. So in 2 years, indeed, I had that one-way ticket to India. So things happened pretty quick. And I made it a point of pilgrimage over to Maui 20 years later and give Ram Dass a hug. And a big, wholehearted thank you for his inspiration at that time. Jack Cornfield was shortly after that too, as I was living down the street from Spirit Rock and where I first met Thich Nhat Hanh. Retreat. So much gratitude for all those who helped to guide us, especially at that time when guidance can really be what we need to help to discover where our spiritual inspiration really is. So Be Here Now. That summed up so much of the teachings. Being present and aware. These themes are what I inevitably ended up connecting with all along the way. Whatever teachings, I'd go off to India, and the teachings which had that theme about it's right here and now. It's about your own being, your own consciousness, your own awareness, your own loving, your own caring, your compassion. Those teachings are the ones which really attracted me and inspired me. And then later on, in the Thai forest tradition, those teachers that were, and many of the general themes are about your own being and knowing and awareness and presence and in the here and now. And this is where the Buddha Dharma, or the nature of nature, is able to teach us in the here and now. So those teachings really had a karmic connection for me. They helped us simplify things wonderfully. After a few years of traveling in Asia, everywhere I go, okay, wherever you go, there you are. And I just recognized that everything I needed to do was here and now, and find a good intentional community to do that. And so, yep, I hadn't thought to open with something like that, but it does just help you all get to know us a little bit about what themes are inspiring us and how that's been spiritual inspiration and guidance for us. And so those themes of being present and aware, and liberation right here and now, that could actually have a big influence on our view to practice, for example. Perhaps we're already tuned into that different traditions can have kind of quite different views, and hence different techniques to practice. For example, some traditions are going to focus more on what we stop doing than what we start doing. Even this question last night about desire for becoming is related to that. Some traditions, like even with just doing meditation or samadhi or getting into jhana, has to do more with what we stop doing. That's why this thing about paying attention to things which agitate the mind, or or at least highlighting those things, like excessive reliance on the mind to explain things and giving rise to doubts, or just excessive concern or worry about the past and the future. Those are all like classic hindrances to samadhi or to meditation. So some teachings, some teachers will be emphasizing more what we stop doing. Is the more important thing. And so, as we just said, briefly at the end of the meditation session this morning, it may already be occurring to us. And again, this is a broad group, so we hope we're not, this isn't too much review, but we can see that there do as if seem to be just dimensions of peace or relaxation or stillness and silence, which reveal themselves, not even necessarily emerge, but get revealed when certain obscurations or blinders, or maybe this does have to do with shifting from thinking and doing into being and knowing. And we see that there's already this dimension of amazement, contentment here, peace and contentment. I mean, we say peace or relaxation, but there's so much contentment and well-being in that. How's that going to influence us? We're more able to get peace and well-being inside. What effect does that have on our seeking, desires and sensuality and gratification outside, or needing to get it from others? You see, when it's already there, maybe that opens up for a much more harmonious and fruitful relationship with other people, with other things in the world, sense objects, sense pleasures, material possessions, all of that. That's so basic. But look, if it's not being emphasized in the view of the teachings or the tradition or the particular teacher or whatever, it can remain obscure or covered over for a long, long time. And then it may be as if a discovery, oh, wow. So this is a bit one of the features of those traditions which point to the here and now rather than the future. Our peace and contentment is to be discovered in the here and now. And actually, many of us would not dispute that this is definitely the message from the Buddha, from the very first early teachings, even though there's much you can read that involves, as we said, bhavana, cultivation, development. So all the while, we want to hear this as a both and. But sometimes we'll be emphasizing more the immanence aspect of it. That this is just a dimension of, and we haven't yet been super assertive yet, hoping everyone can kind of ease into their meditative space before we, but this is one of the brilliant features of the awareness meditations, is that one will discover unambiguously that just being able to shift from thinking into knowing creates a whole new degree of freedom, unimaginable to the mind. Because being at least excessively engaged with the mind and the thinking, all the reactivity is just so prone to, have its own momentum. And one thought will give rise to the next. But being able to have some space, have the option to shift into the knowing or the awareness, a whole new degree of freedom. And it's a whole new next level for our practice, guaranteed, 100% guaranteed. And all practitioners have to go through that. You cannot actually get the deeper realizations through just the mind or the thinking. That's why they have special technical terms in the Pali like jnana, which are more intuitive, or Ajahn Jeff has unmediated knowing. We all know there's a special kind of knowing, or they call it realization, which arises from or as if in the heart itself, as if nature speaking for itself, or as if from the knowing itself, that does not take verbal thought or thinking. It's more of a non-verbal communication. This is the nature of nature. And so that is already there in potential, or very explicitly in our discovery of that awareness faculty. Or one can think of it more as intuition as well, because there's definitely a feeling component to it. So this aspect of what more emphasizing what we stop doing than what we start doing is taking very explicitly these instructions from the Buddha about this desire for becoming and fixation on the future. That's just seen to be such an overarching habit that the sort of the mental life will have. To always go from, a past memory or image of self. What can we say about ourselves that's not from memory? My mind goes silent when I ask that question. It's like speechless, but that's not nothing. That is a space of being present and aware. Maybe that dimension, that space does have something to do with what a deeper identity is about. Maybe. Perhaps some of us are already quite convinced of that. So I should really let others join in here. But just this theme of what we having more to do with what we stop doing, what we start doing, is a very fruitful theme, and perhaps I will have we can share on that.
Yeah, for me it was also a book by Aya Kema called Being Nothing, Going Nowhere. Mm-hmm. And I thought it was just such a brilliant title when I first saw that book. And I hadn't been actually so much practicing in Buddhism. I've had a different kind of practice. It felt a bit like coming home in a way, because before I had also been doing a lot of these things like NLP or Anthony Robbins, if you're familiar with that. It is all about like becoming successful or rich or whatever, and fulfilling your desires, which is sort of in the world what people seem to want. And it's very stressful actually to be in that kind of space. And this book was like, oh, I don't have to do any of that. It has a different way of being, that I don't have to go with what the society tells me that I have to do. I can just be, and that's okay. So for me, it was like coming home, because it reminded me a lot about the kind of meditation I've been doing as a child. And I've been meditating until sort of the age of 7, until I was 6, 7, until I had to go to school. Um, and then I sort of lost that, because in school I was more preoccupied with being part of the group, and as we get all that, and my parents didn't meditate, so there was no encouragement to keep the meditation going. But that book that brought me back to that point is like, oh yes, I remember that time when I was meditating as a child, and when things would just flow, where we would I've noticed that if your mind became silent when you didn't have all these thoughts going on, if you had a problem or something, clarity would arise at some point, and it would just be something like, you say, why didn't I think of this? It's so obvious, but I didn't see the solution to this problem while I was trying to think through it. And this is something that stayed with me ever since. It's like knowing that when there is a problem, just allowing the clarity to come up without trying to think our way through is often a form of trying to control it. And it has a lot to do with how we've been taught how to think about things, or there's a lot of influence from other people. But if you just stay silent, then some solution will arise, and that's always the right one, or like most likely the right one. And but it also requires an amount of trust, a trust that, well, a trust in the Dhamma actually, that this will actually work, that I don't have to control things for things to go right, that I can let things flow. So it's very much going against the stream. It's not, oh, I'm here and I have to go over there, and here is not good enough, because that's usually how we feel, how we think. We think, oh, I have to be better in this, or have to be this has to be different, or whatever. And we're trying to change things in our life and try to control that. And so it's always like, here is not good enough, where I have to go over there. And what Buddha says is just the opposite. It's like, no, here it's good enough. This is how things are. And we can just stay in this present moment and go for deeper inside. So it's just going against the stream, against that stream of the world. And that gives so much relief also. It's like, oh, not having to have to go anywhere else, just being in this present moment. It gives so much more relaxation, peace of mind. But it requires this trust, and then things start to flow and things start coming your way. Like Ajahn says, it's like when the student is ready, the teacher will come. You don't have to go out looking for things. Things will never go the way you thought they should go, but they're always going to be better in the end. Some of you probably know Ajahn Brahm's story of good, bad, who knows, in that. So, good, bad, who knows. Things happen, and you might think, oh, this is terrible. But, well, maybe it isn't. Maybe this is just this little gift in disguise, this little lesson that you have to learn right now. And if you come through it and you look back at it and say, oh, that was a gift, actually. And that's something you hear also from a lot of people who've recovered from cancer, for instance. Because, it sounds like a terrible thing to happen. And when you first hear about it, it's like devastating, it's terrible. But when you come out of it on the other side and you look back and go, oh, I've learned so much. It's actually been such a gift. And so things like that happen to a lot of people. But it requires, again, this trust in this process, in the Dhamma, in to be able to let go of what we want and allowing things to flow. There was this question yesterday as well. that I thought about this idea of letting go of what you want, of letting go of wanting, because the wanting is what is trying to bring us out of our meditation constantly as well, wanting to be somewhere, wanting our meditation to be different, wanting our life to be different, something, wanting to make changes rather than just being here in this present moment right now. And when you can stop that wanting, there's nothing anymore there's just peace. There's just the silence in the mind. And clarity can arise after a while. And yeah, it's a beautiful process. And each time you notice it again, that, oh, this is what happened right now, it makes your faith in this path a little bit stronger. And you see, oh, okay, this is what it is. Every time I try and go like controlling things, changing my life, things start to not always, sometimes it go right, sometimes it go wrong. It's never quite certain. But if I allow the mind to calm down and come up with these answers, things do work out. One thing that I noticed in my own life is that I quite often tend to start getting also attached to a certain spiritual path that I'm on. And that's something I picked up from what Ajahn was talking about, is how difficult it then for me is to let go of that. For instance, when I first came to the Goenka tradition, I was like, oh, this is it. This is wonderful. This is absolutely it. And it's brought me so much. It's been, really wonderful to be in that. Oh, wow. At some point, okay, like, oh, I've learned so much here, but something didn't feel right anymore. Something had changed. And I was trying to hold on to that. It's like, no, this is what I need to do. This path, this tradition, this is where I belong. And life was saying, hey, you have to move on. And so it's taken me a while to, I went through a very difficult period of lots of doubt and fear. Fear comes up when you have to let go sometimes. And then I did let go, and looking back, I go, oh, I'm actually glad I did leave that. And I moved on to another path. And that wasn't at all what I thought it was going to be. It was much harder. And, and looking back at that, oh, I learned so much there as well. Not what I thought I was going to learn. But I did learn a lot, and I'm very grateful for that. And yeah, at some point there will come a time when I have to let go of that and go further in another path as well, in another direction. And sometimes just things come on your way that you, especially when you don't expect it. Things just come on your way, and you know, like, oh, this is the path I now need to follow, and that's perfectly okay. And that's the beauty of it. If you learn to trust that process and to let go of what you think you should be doing. Quite often that's what it is. What we should be doing, what we have been taught in our society that we should be doing and should be thinking. And letting go of that can be quite scary, because it's also letting go a little bit of this, what we thought was our security, or what we thought was the clan that we belong to. But if we learn to get through that fear, and so it's like, no, I should nothing. I have to follow my heart. And then things start to open up and happen. Again, it takes this trust. I think that's about no continue.
So yeah, before I came into contact with Buddhism, I was sort of just lost, as in I always had an interest in say philosophy, literature, history, different religions. My background was Hinduism, with studying about Hinduism, Islam, Christianity, Buddhism as well to some extent, but just more theoretical. And and then the ways that are the various options that are presented in the world in terms of how to live one's life. Nothing seemed to make any sense. What we just accumulate things or experiences, or and that will somehow bring happiness. And you push other people down so you can get more things, or what, however one wishes to frame that. That's what seemed to be the sort of various options that are presented. That's what it seemed to boil down to, and that didn't really make much sense. Or I never felt inclined towards that. But then I didn't really have any other like things I would read in philosophy or religion. Many of them were quite inspiring, but then at the end of the day, I was just left with the question: but then, what does one actually do? It's all nice ideas, nice concepts, even inspiring, but that feeling of just being lost and not really having an answer, not having a direction to go to investigate. And then also on an internal level, I think I mentioned that the strangeness of the ordinary, how we live as if we know what it is to be human, what it is to be alive, and yet if we start to look more closely, it's very strange. And again, with various philosophers or religious texts, they had their own stories, but not really a way to investigate what is this. And then eventually I went to a meditation class. I was initially interested in Zen Buddhism, reading books by D.T. Suzuki, and I think there was a footnote. There's this story. I think it's a Mahayana in one of the sutras, or the Zen story, that the Buddha in one of the sermons, he holds up a flower, and then I think Mahakashyapa, he understands and he smiles. And I still don't know what Mahayana Sutra that comes from, but it's one of the Zen koans they use, I think. But yeah, that seemed to have some sort of resonance. And then I looked at the preface of the book, and it was by Christmas Humphreys, a preface by Christmas Humphreys, president of the Buddhist Society. And this, I thought, first of all, what sort of a person has a name called Christmas? But he apparently was a High Court judge in the UK, and he started this Buddhist Society in 1924. So they just had basic meditation classes. I went to one of those, and there it was just basic meditation instructions, the breath, noticing the sensations in the body, air touching the skin, the cloth, clothes, etc. And just that small shift in what one gives attention to. by allowing the mind to come into the present, and then just observing and noticing the changes. So that which I had taken to be permanent or not really even looked at or considered, like the body, but not an idea of the body, but actually how it feels, how one experiences it in the present, and the various changes that occur. It's not something stable. There's always some new sensation or and neutral sensations which we don't ordinarily notice. Like, I can't, if I have my eyes closed, how do I know that I have feet? And there's some sensation there in my hands, and there's some feeling with, this whole world opened up that I never really noticed before. And that felt like being in such a darkness, and then you see a little light, and then you think, oh, maybe I can go in that direction. That's sort of an actual pathway to investigate what is this being here. And then through that meditation or that getting, in a sense, having a different perspective than even standing in London at, I think, a bus stop. I was, I would sometimes feel so peaceful, even though it was very noisy, and just to that, if I remember to notice, remember, I think, probably looking back, remembering to cultivate the presence, allowing the mind to receive, to become resting in that knowing, trusting in the awareness. And then the conditions that one is experiencing, they become less important, because that which knows the conditions is not so affected by them. Whereas ordinarily the habit patterns of the mind tend to get caught up in the conditions themselves and get sort of, like on a roller coaster, just following wherever they go, and that can be very exhausting, using up a lot of energy. Whereas if one is able to sort of stay more with the knowing, with the presence, then one can, it's like getting a different perspective. One observes the processes as they are happening. One is not sort of caught up in them, and through that, then also that, noticing impermanence. Ordinarily, if we are experiencing something difficult, it can seem like it will go on forever, and it doesn't come to an end. But if we are able to sort of observe, I think, like example that's often used, say, some painful feeling in meditation. So initially, it can just seem like something very solid that's going through, and it's very wishes to get away from it. But if we are able to stay with it and just observe it, then we start to notice, in fact, it's not something solid, it's changing. It rises in intensity and falls away, rises again, or it might sort of, have a different shape or different, like if it's here, if there's a pain in the knee, or and then if one looks closer, if one looks just close by, then there's not so much pain, and then as one approaches it, and there's pain again, or and that thing of uh, changing experience, and then so much of what we take as subjective experience, uh, how we see our lives, the views we have built up, views about ourselves, views about others, views about the world. So much of it we build upon those sorts of impermanent, fragmentary experiences uh, that level of feeling of Vedana that we don't tend to notice, but that just on a basic level, if there's something attractive or pleasant and the mind wishes to go towards it, or if there's something unpleasant or painful, then the tendency to try want to get away from it. And based on that sort of base level of experience, we build a whole sort of structure, and then experience life through that lens, and then gradually starting to learn more about the Buddha's teachings, more like reading the Pali Canon. And there's, I mean, especially as teaching in the Pali Canon, there's so much of it is so practical, things one can try out and then see what is the result. And that sort of unfolding as it taking an interest in what comes next, because like the future is unknown, but if one is and then when I was in the Zen group, in one of the talks, the person giving the talk had been to a talk by a Zen monk, and the monk in that talk was saying, in practice, all that is important is just giving yourself wholeheartedly, just to taking the next step that is right before you. And that is the most important thing in practice. And then the person in the audience, they asked, "Oh, but surely that's not right, because if you want to go in that direction, and then you are walking in another direction, then surely that wouldn't work." But then the monk said, "Oh, no, don't worry about that, because if you need to go in that direction, then the path will move." So, yeah, I like that, because often there can be this desire of, oh, I want to find the perfect teacher, the perfect monastery, the perfect tradition, etc. But if we are able to, like with sincerity, focus completely on what at this moment is being done, or learning from whatever we may be experiencing in this moment, then in a sense one is in tune with one's own needs at a particular time. And then the little decisions one would make in terms of where to go, what tradition or technique, etc., to follow, then they would sort of lead us to an environment that is most conducive to our needs at particular time. And then as then there will be more things, and then okay, because we are not the same person all the time. So as we change, as we develop, then our needs and what we need for practice may also change. So, but if we are able to stay as much as possible with the purity of one's intention to practice in the present, then however the path unfolds, hopefully it is in a supportive direction.
Zen, Zen is wonderful in so many ways, and humorous, which is wonderful as well. Humor does really seem to open the heart and mind. So Dogen, one of the famous Zen masters, he has this teaching: to study the way is to study the self. To study the self is to forget the self. To forget the self is to be enlightened by all things. So in my early days of amazement and wowness at encouraging these kinds of teachings and slogans, I also came across this, I think it's Kashyapa. This is from the Mahayana tradition, or the Zen tradition. The first enlightened disciple of the Buddha was said to be Kashyapa in the Flower Sermon. And I read that and was just amazed at like the beauty and the profundity that the Buddha could hold up a flower, and that nature, that beauty, that magic and mystery it could be enlightening for someone who is receptive and perhaps open to receive that teaching. So sometimes you'll hear us saying, letting nature teach the nature of nature. Very much a Thai forest theme about actually everything right now is 100% nature. Everything right now in our experience, everything, all these six senses, some material object, society, cosmology, whatever, it's all 100% nature teaching us the nature of nature. And so this thing about being a student of nature or being a learner, in Zen they have this too. They say when you come to the teacher, empty your teacup, which is symbolic for being a learner, being receptive, opening the heart and mind to learn something. So this flower sermon, when I was discovering these kind of ancient Eastern wisdom and Eastern spirituality, was at a perfect time in my life too. This thing about being enlightened by all things. I had just had like a rattlesnake bite. It was kind of life-threatening, and I was in ICU for days, but I got very, very sick. And so a friend took me over to Spirit Rock to cheer me up. And it happened to be the Monday night, well, it was the Monday night with Jack Cornfield. And this was shortly before Thich Nhat Hanh came to visit. But anyway, Allen Ginsberg had just died. So there was lots of beat poets and merry pranksters and the transcendent, poets and things like that. And so it was a William Blake poem, really opened up my imagination, and it was see a world, to see a universe in a grain of sand, a world in a wild flower. Hold infinity in the palm of your hand, eternity in an hour. It's just like, wow. Again, this was part of the nature vision quest, was really just opening up the world of nature. And my father had sent me the Austrian physicist Fritjof Capra wrote a book called The Tao of Physics back in the 70s, which really inspired especially the scientific or the educated community to open up to the profundity of ancient Eastern wisdom and cosmology like that. My father, being a science teacher, had sent me that book in my teens, The Tao of Physics. And Fritjof Capra later signed my physics book. I met him in Berkeley. So all of this wonder of nature. And then I credit my first spiritual insight. We used to read the Tao Te Ching, the ancient Chinese spiritual classic. We take that down to the desert when we were catching rattlesnakes and read this around the campfire under the starry desert sky. I had this epiphany, like this body's made of stardust, just like the Joni Mitchell song. And then all of a sudden, like the cosmos and everything was one, not separate and interconnected or interbeing, as Thich Nhat Hanh was famously say. So that was like this insight that humans are not separate from nature, which was already no surprise because we were studying Gaian theory in ecology and biology, which sees life as one whole thing. You cannot remove anything out of abstraction, like the stardust or the air, the oxygen that's made from the plants and everything else. So these sort of unification insights, like the Mahakashapa flower, or to be enlightened by all things, or this William Blake poem. Another William Blake poem from that night was, one who binds to oneself a joy, does the winged life destroy? One who kisses the joy as it flies, lives in eternity's sunrise. Okay, maybe you're not a romantic poet like me, but I was absolutely blown away. Oh my gosh, there's a way to be in harmony with nature without clinging to things. Look, you can appreciate impermanence because it's a sunrise and a sunset. And well, after all, everything is changing. Isn't that part of the magic of it? Imagine if things didn't change. Would anything be happening? No sensation could give way to the next sensation. No words, no sights, nothing. One change and manifestation. It's amazing. So when I was looking around to all the traditions, this is what I was looking for. What do they all have in common? They may have different views, different techniques or whatever, but they all have in common that I am here right now and I am present and aware. And this is 100% nature happening. So that seemed to be a common feature. And the Buddha's teachings, like I took a Buddhist psychology at that time in college, and it was just amazing. This thing about our, phenomenology and paying more attention to what we're experiencing. Is it the case that sensations are changeable and impermanent? Why, yes. It doesn't matter what tradition you're in. This is a fact of experience. It's a fact of, being a conscious, sentient being like that. So that seemed just ruthlessly universal, and that all traditions would have to, offer that or be including that as like the heart, especially of their insight and understanding and wisdom. And the fact of knowing or awareness for any experiencing to be happening at all is the knowing of it. Every sensation in consciousness is arising in this knowing. Knowing hearing, knowing seeing, knowing touching, knowing thinking. It's all arising in the knowing. So if the tradition doesn't include that, we're left out. Thing about being present and aware, or just the fact of being and knowing. These are absolutely universal to any and every experience. And so it made sense to me. Any spirituality, or especially like a wisdom tradition, the need to be including them. And indeed they are. So, yeah. So this thing about the discovery of the here and now, or the discovery of being present and aware. What if the wanting and the desires shifted from wanting to be there and then to actually wanting to be here and now? We have a saying, desires are competing throughout the day, and the stronger desire wins. Look and see. Will we act against our desire? Is there some desire and intention in every action? this basic desire is presented as the first in this factor of right effort, right energy in the Noble Eightfold Path. So we see desires are competing throughout the day. It's not enough to just say no desire. The next step is wise desire. That's why we call right view the forerunner of the path. It's informing every single factor of the path. Right view, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, right meditation. So shifting the desires from being there and then to a recognition and appreciation of being here and now, being present and aware, learning from our experiencing, having our insights inform and guide our practice, and put it into action. Then we get the fruits. Insights are activated through action, and we get the fruits, and that's what gives us evidence. That's what will be convincing. No matter how much we think, we'll never be able to fully convince it. Through action, we get the evidence, which is convincing, which are the consequences of actions, the fruits of actions, and they're beneficial and skillful. So we've shared a bit from our inspiration and what teachings or expressions of the Dharma have been inspiring and guiding us. We hope that helps to bring alive in us what spiritual inspiration is inspiring and guiding to us too. Really tune into that and let that be our guiding light, as it were. Okay, so we wish everyone, may the retreat yogis have fruitful practice. Okay, we'll have an hour of walking before lunchtime. Oh, any announcements?
So I still have a few household announcements about a few things. In this place, please keep the windows closed and also the doors downstairs. They don't close very easily, as you probably noticed. If you try to do it softly, it usually stays open and then it goes open after a while. So you have to hear the click, I'm afraid. So,
Do you have to latch it up?
No, you don't have to do
I have
that.
to do that every single time. Ever since
Well,
the first
that
door
works
blew
too,
open.
but that's only your cootie.
Oh.
But no, it has to
Now
click.
you're telling.
If trying to move very softly, then it doesn't work. So we have a ventilation system, and we're trying to work that, but it doesn't work very well if you keep like windows open. So that's why, yeah. Then our next door, I know that this is complex with the door in that house. This morning I put some duct tape on it to keep it open, but that's also maybe not the solution. I'm not entirely sure what the best solution is for that one, but yeah, we also don't want to waste too much energy, of course, there. So so that it doesn't stay wide open or anything. So maybe it is best to take the duct tape off, but keep it in a little. If you know that there's people coming behind you, then just keep it a little bit open, and then maybe the last one can close it. And also at night, maybe the last person who goes to sleep, please turn out all the lights downstairs and the outside light as well, and also make sure that the door is closed. That would be very helpful. Yeah, maybe somebody wants to take the duct tape off now.
I have already taken it off.
Okay, wonderful.
Because when the door isn't closed, the door just by itself opens wide up, and then it was just too cold in the house.
Yeah,
and my apologies, I have opened several times.
Okay,
the window. Sorry.
No, if you didn't know, but this is a passive house, or semi-passive. So that's why we have the ventilation system, and it doesn't work. It's actually a heat exchange system, and it doesn't work if the windows are open. So yeah, okay, I think that's it.